Ladies and gentlemen, in the next presentation, we'll talk about the personalization and the future of messenger marketing, the buzz evolve. And please join me in welcoming on our stage Mr. Jeremy Wolf, Vice President CENC Southeast Asia RQE.
Thank you. Hi there. Sorry, I prefer my front page. Hi, my name's Jeremy. I'm from the UK, but I've been in Asia now for 11 years. I've spent almost all my time actually in China. I've just moved from Beijing to the Southeast Asia region. I spend most of my time between Singapore and here. So yeah, it's a great honor to be here. Thank you for having me. My presentation today is on personalization and the future of messenger marketing, and how I believe the chatbots will evolve. So this is the agenda today, and it's really a summary of what I'm going to say, the main points I'm going to make. The first one is something I believe. I believe that recent years talk about messenger marketing has been distracted by chatbots. It's been distracted by very gimmicky campaigns which we've called chatbots. And it's distracted from a much bigger opportunity, and that opportunity is around personalized communications on Messenger. It's about CRM-type communications on Messenger. So I'll talk about that, then I'll take a step back and talk about our approach to personalization in general when it comes to communications. And then I will rein in the excitement a little bit and talk about the limits of personalization. I think we're getting a bit too obsessed with personalization these days in marketing, so I'll talk about that a bit. And then I'll share a quick case, which is some of the work I was doing in China recently. So as I said, I've recently moved to the region, and I'm very keen to recreate some of the work I've been doing in China here. In particular, some of the work we're doing on WeChat, which is the big messenger app in China, of course. In China, we're using WeChat for essentially what is CRM. We're running huge CRM programs, millions and millions of subscribers, segmented using all kinds of data, using offline POS data, using e-commerce data, and we're sending segmented communications through that. And that's all happening on WeChat. Naturally, I'm quite keen to see what we can do here on the Messenger apps. So I'd ask people, hey, what are we doing with our clients on Messenger? And people say, yeah, you mean chatbots, right? To me, chatbots sounds horribly gimmicky, and indeed, a lot of the work I see is damn gimmicky. There's these kind of one-off kind of campaign communications that go quiet as soon as that campaign's done. But I believe there's a much bigger opportunity, an opportunity to engage consumers over time through Messenger in a much more business, results-driven way, to really engage them across that consumer life cycle. I'm calling that Messenger CRM. That's what I'm going to talk about today. So a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to a preview from our friends at Facebook for some research they were doing on Messenger, and some research they'd done on what they're calling conversational commerce. I thought, great, something a bit less gimmicky, finally. I went to the preview, and indeed it was good, it was interesting, but it still felt very, very chatbotty. Very much about that one-off communication, perhaps helping resolve a sales issue, etc., etc. And the word CRM was mentioned maybe once throughout the 3 or 4 hour presentation. Again, I feel somewhat they'd missed the point. And don't get me wrong, I think some of the work we're doing on chatbots is great, and what Facebook was saying about conversational commerce is great. But I believe there's a bigger opportunity around personalization through the relevant messenger apps, which of course is WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Zalo, etc., etc. The bigger opportunity is around personalization. So now I'm going to take a step back briefly, and I'm going to talk generally about theories, our approach to personalization, before jumping back into the messenger context. So personalization means different things to different marketers, different things to different people. There are good, bad, and terrible examples of personalization. This is one of the first examples of personalization. I think it was in 2015, 2016 from the Unilever brand Marmite, where they allowed you to customize your own jars and customize content. A really, really nice example and one of the first examples of personalization. So it's good personalization. There's bad personalization. This is a pretty tacky example. Apparently this was a trend recently of people getting personalized flip-flops, personalized sandals. Apparently it was a thing. And then there's really, really bad examples, which I'm not going to explain. So there's good examples, bad examples, terrible examples of personalization. I'm not going to explain this one in any more detail. So we can get it wrong, but when we get it right, the benefit to us, the benefit to marketing communications is about relevance. And it's been talked about, actually, the gentleman from Philips mentioned it, and some of the other presenters have talked about the importance of relevance. And of course, this is what personalization helps us drive with our consumers. As consumers, I think we are willing to give a bit of our time, give a bit of our data, if it means that experience can be a little bit more convenient, a little bit more engaging, a little bit more entertaining. So this is relevance, and this is what personalization is all about. I've got a video to explain that point of view a bit. At Ogilvy, we believe personalization is a two-way street. It's about making consumers more valuable to your brand. It's about making your brand more valuable to consumers. Underpinning that is the belief that all consumers, all of us, are not created equal. We are unique individuals with very, very different needs. And equally important, every consumer represents a different level of value to our business and to our brands. And if we're able to create relevant experiences for them, we have more chance of winning their hearts, their minds, their friends, and their wallets. And at Ogilvy, we believe there's different types of personalization, there's different levels of personalization. Not everything is about those one-to-one, those individualized communications. That won't be relevant for all brands. It may not be relevant for a lot of categories and probably never will be. But we believe there's three levels of personalization that we need to think about. Firstly, there's mass personalization. This is talking to one rather large subset of the population. This is in a differentiated way. I believe most, if not all, brands are doing this in some form. That's one to many. Example, people who have searched for chocolate. So we know they're in that chocolate buying category. And then the next level is what we call micro-personalization. This is one to group. So this is contextualized for someone perhaps at a certain stage of the customer journey. This is people that have searched for chocolate and work in banking. You know, and the kind of creative we could serve to them might be around taking a break, taking some chocolate when, I don't know, the stock market is blown up or something like that. And then there's hyper-personalization. So this is one-to-one communications. This is where you're talking individually to one consumer in almost a CRM way. This is someone who has searched for chocolate, works in banking, and we know exactly which store they are near, etc., etc. So that's individualized hyper-personalization. How is personalization driving growth for our brands? Well, We believe this happens on two levels. Firstly, it's about efficiency, which is on the y-axis. This is essentially about freeing up media waste, and we call that precision. And then we've got effectiveness, which is about personalization and driving increased relevance. Now, I think originally and in the last few years, I think the focus has been very much on efficiency. Of course, with Facebook, we can take our first-party data, we can put it on Facebook, on Google, we can free up a lot of media waste, and we've all got pretty good at that. But I believe that the focus now is shifting more towards effectiveness and higher ROI from personalizing the content for different groups. And that's something that brands are all more or less all waking up to at the moment. This is the head of Starbucks, absolutely critical to his business, and also the CEO of a small Switzerland-based company who you can't hear.
Where at scale, you can really have a one-to-one communication, two-way street with a consumer. The old model of what I call push advertising, where you develop a product and content, you then try to select media that roughly hit that consumer, and then you hope the message arrives and that consumer will act in a certain way. That model is fading fast. What you can do these days, once you have a consumer's phone number or email address, you can really target specifically to the needs of that person. You can have, at scale, in an automated yet personal way, a conversation, and you have a much, much better hit rate than any time before. And so this is a huge opportunity. We're deeply committed to making the most of this.
Okay, so I think the benefits are quite clear, and if not, hopefully I've made them a bit clearer. There's certainly benefits to personalization, but I believe it has its limits. And I think we talked a lot about personalization relevance today as well, but I really want to rein in the excitement somewhat and say that sometimes personalization doesn't always make sense. A lot of the time it doesn't make sense, and I think we shouldn't get too obsessed with it. So personalization has its limits. This was a slide I actually wrote a couple of days ago and posted it on Twitter. I don't usually get many likes on Twitter at all, but this kind of seemed to be retweeted and liked by everyone in the planning Twitter world, actually, so it can't be too wrong. So personalization has its limits. There's three things we need to consider, I think, before we decide whether to personalize. First is signaling. Sometimes it just makes sense to put one big ad in one big expensive place, because that sends a very clear message to consumers that you're confident enough about your product to invest a huge amount of money, right? And that confidence rubs off on consumers. First principle is signaling. Economics. The economics of personalization are interesting. I think, obviously if you're creating content for different segments, the cost of creative, the cost of production increases. There's also the cost of the technology to deploy that, the data. You might have to pay a guy like me as well, consultancy, et cetera, et cetera. Too often, brands aren't considering the holistic ROI when they're talking about personalization. And I've actually been in situations whereby it probably would have been better to take the money saved from the consultants, the creative, and just put it on more media. You'd actually get more conversions among the relevant audience by just doing that. So get the economics, get the ROI right. The third one is common knowledge. This is really, really interesting and refers to, I think it's interesting, it refers to a principle about branding, really, which is that a lot of people buy a brand because they believe it says something about them. They buy a shoe because they think it says they're cool to their friends. But if you don't believe your friends think the same thing as you about the brand, then there's no point buying into it. And the way you will know if the way you'd suspect your friends think the same thing about the brand is if they had also seen the same ad. And I think too much with personalization, if a consumer feels they've just been on their own watching an ad and no one else has watched it, the effect of that branding doesn't come through. Okay, I could actually talk about this for hours. I'm quite obsessed with it, while I do believe in personalization. So personalization has its limits, and I believe the full personalization opportunity on Messenger really requires us to look to China, which is where I've been for the past 11 years. So I'm going to talk about a case. This is H&M, the fashion retailer. They approached us a few years ago in Shanghai, and similar to a lot of brands, had hundreds of thousands of followers on WeChat, but didn't know what to do with them. Like many brands, they sell a very wide range of products. Therefore, they need to say different things to different people. But they weren't able to do that. At least they weren't able to do that with their current WeChat setup. So what we did, we applied some tools, applied some CRM tools to WeChat, plugged it into the back of WeChat, and started to analyze which consumers were looking at which bits of content we posted. And by the way, when I talk about content, I'm not talking about paid media. I'm talking about the content that people opt in to receive. A little bit like we opt in to receive emails from brands. That's more similar to how it works. So we started analyzing which consumers are looking at which piece of content. We started looking at when they click through, what kind of products are they buying. And we were automatically building profiles of consumers in real time. Hundreds and thousands and then millions and millions of consumers in real time. So we started to get a picture of them. And then we started a few tests. We started to post content to different segments of consumers, and the conversion rates through to purchase increased hugely by several percentage points. And when you've got 8 million followers, that's quite a significant uplift. So I'll show a video now which explains it. We positioned it as a fashion stylist, because H&M sells a whole range of products, of course, and the role of WeChat and the role of our messenger CRM was about kind of recommending which products, etc., etc. So I will play the video.
What did it feel like to be a fashion brand over the last 3 years in China? Not good. Every brand launched on e-commerce, so everyone became a competitor. And customers were going green, which meant less purchases. That was the scene. So how in did H&M's revenue and customer base both grow tremendously over the past 3 years? The simple answer is not that simple, because it's amazing. So here's the breakdown. 3 years, 3 steps, refashioning each time for a complete digital transformation. We built the H&M personal stylist, run by an intelligent WeChat algorithm, analyzing millions of consumer data points in real time, delivering personalized content, turning a read into a click-through, into a purchase. Then, we launched a mini-app digital styling community, where followers share their styles, inspiring each other, drawing millions of consumer-driven organic interactions that H&M could capture and capitalize on. And finally, we swung the digital doors to H&M wide open. The complete omni-channel experience. All first-hand consumer data feeding into one central database from every platform, allowing us to deliver a personalized multi-channel brand experience to each customer, on and offline. Fully integrated and always learning, despite 3 years of growing competition, with more and more choices for consumers. We increased H&M's WeChat following by 400%, brought 5 times more e-commerce traffic from WeChat, and best of all, achieved a 15.1% average annual growth rate. We asked what it felt like to be a fashion brand. For H&M, the best answer is more relevant than ever.
So again, relevance. Thank you. Just to revisit the framework I showed earlier on the different levels of personalization. So when it comes to H&M and our WeChat CRM, our messenger CRM, sometimes we just want to send something to a big subset of the audience, or even the whole audience. An example is our big brand CNY campaigns. Then we have micro-personalization. So for example, if somebody clicks on something to do with kidswear, we will tag them as someone that's interested in kidswear, and they will get kidswear content sent to them. Another example is people that have showed interest in the divided range of clothing. And then there's hyper-personalization. So this is usually linked to a specific purchase. So when someone buys a specific thing, we will send them a push message 48 hours later, suggesting another product or asking them about their product in a very, very personalized way. So that's how that framework works. I'll quickly show you a bit behind the scenes because I'm low on time. This is what we call the taxonomy, which is essentially how we structure the data behind the scenes. There's nothing special about this. A lot of CRM programs will have this, but I still think it's really important just to show anyway. So this is some of the information we're collecting in real time based on the behavior on WeChat. For example, you've got kidswear here. You know, anyone that's interested in kidswear will be tagged as such and then targeted with kidswear content. Another one, if you remember earlier, I talked about how we can make consumers more valuable to our brand. An example is how they are engaging with us on e-commerce, on EC. So high, average, low, and none. We might do certain campaigns targeted to people with low engagement on e-commerce in order to drive them up that value chain to make them more valuable to us. So that's a little bit just behind the scenes for H&M. Just to summarize, really, you know, I don't believe this is just China. I believe the opportunities are here as well. Indeed, we have started working with brands here in Vietnam on this, FMCG brands specifically, on Facebook Messenger. In Indonesia, we've been doing it on WhatsApp recently. Some really exciting cases that I'm not ready to show you yet, but I would like to one day, perhaps. We're getting it started with some brands. The opportunity really is that consumers are giving us permission to engage with them on a very intimate platform. And we need to make the most of this, not just have some crazy gimmicky chatbot. I'll go quickly. And then the other one to note is that open rates and other metrics are significantly higher on messenger apps compared with email. So really consider that. And the other thing that's fascinating, I think, and perhaps a better opportunity than it is in China, is that a lot of the big messenger platforms here can integrate with your other CRM tools, your Salesforce, et cetera, et cetera. So there's huge opportunities here. Just to summarize quickly, that was some of the future of messaging marketing, perhaps. The bots evolve. Let's move beyond gimmicky campaign-based chatbots to a longer-term relationship with consumers through Messenger. And that's about personalization. I talked about our approach to personalization. Not all consumers are created equal, indeed. I talked about the limits. Let's not go crazy with personalization. Sometimes it just makes sense to show everyone the same damn ad, right? We shouldn't forget that. And then just to look to China as where I see some of the opportunities in the future will be. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for your presentation.